think it's hard for me to talk about works evolving because there's always this development from one thing to the other, even though they might look very similar. Especially the linen works are part of like a very extensive series. I guess the part number one was receiving this tape from my father and then listening to the piano improvisation of my grandfather, who was originally German from Stuttgart, and yeah, through all the Nazi regime, he was the only person in the family who managed to escape. And I was in touch for a while with a historian from Stuttgart, and he was preparing like the Stolpersteine for my great-grandparents. And that was the first time we got to know even their names, or that they existed or what they did, because it's something that my father didn't really get from his father. So through that, I received a lot of extra information because he did already his own research through visiting archives as a very experienced historian, like he could have access to. So that led to this detail of the car that he had to sell for a fraction of its price in order to leave to Chile. And that's where my father was born, and all this idea of forced displacement and migration kind of comes along until it's like a super zoop until I see myself in Germany and feeling like, oh wow, this feels like very weird. It's something about what's not being written, but I write it in my own way. Like there's a sound piece that it's also part of the exhibition, and it has a very simple background, which is my father encountered this tape, a cassette, and it's a piano improvisation of my grandfather. And when he mentioned and he showed it to me and we played it, and it was the first time that I listened to the sound, to this. And after working with that through some time, I was live streaming it on the radio, and then eventually I started whistling it myself, like going back to my house from the studio or in different moments of the day, and then I realized that it carried this sort of weight in contrast with any other song I can be singing or like whistling. And I decided to sit in a room with a recorder and simply whistle it as far as I could recall. And I kind of get lost in the entry, in the intro, and it just becomes this sort of odd loop. The sculpture is, I was very interested in having sort of object, something that it's somehow in a space of limbo between, I don't know, like not understanding necessarily what it is, because it's simply a block of wood that it has more to do with furniture design in a way than it necessarily has to do with the history of sculpture, even though it can lead to a whole thesis on minimalism and stuff like this, but it really doesn't go there. It's more about, removing shape, surface, and staying with the experience of just blocking. In this sense, it's blocking the space. The idea was to have it as close to the door. I think the work, in a way, has two sides to it. Like I've been talking a lot about the background, like the source, but the viewer doesn't necessarily need to know that from my point of view. Like it's something that kind of lingers, stays in the background. You get parts of it, but I don't expect people to get the full picture in the first visit. And something I'm enjoying, it's also that we're in a context where it's contemporary art and it's also photography. So there is a perspective of the work changing through the idea of image making, no? And the history of photography.